The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. Picture yourself in a cozy coffee shop on a perfect afternoon. You're lost in a book you absolutely love, wearing that jacket that makes you feel like yourself. Then suddenly, a waiter rushes by, trips, and sends a wave of scalding dark coffee cascading all over you. In that instant, what happens inside you? For most of us, there's this lightning bolt of fury that shoots through our entire body. We might yell, maybe make a scene. Later we'd explain it away with, "I just lost it. I couldn't control myself. It felt like pure, uncontrollable reaction." But here's a mind-bending question. What if that wasn't actually true? What if, in that precise moment, you actually manufactured that anger? You didn't just get angry like catching a cold. You actively chose anger as a tool, a shortcut to make the waiter understand the severity of the situation without having to navigate the slower, messier route of calm discussion. You deployed anger strategically to achieve a specific outcome. This single reality-shaking idea is just your first step into a philosophy that has quietly sold over 5 million copies and sparked a cultural movement, beginning in Japan and rippling outward across the entire world. The book is called The Courage to be Disliked, crafted by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga, and it's definitely not your typical self-help fare. It unfolds as a dialogue, an intimate conversation between a wise philosopher and a deeply frustrated young man that feels somehow timeless. This book opens a door to the powerful yet often forgotten psychology of Alfred Adler, a towering figure who walked alongside giants like Freud and Jung. But here's the crucial difference. While Freud insisted we're prisoners trapped by our past traumas, Adler proposed something far more electrifying. He believed we aren't shackled by our history, our circumstances, or anything that's ever happened to us. He believed that right now, in this very moment, every single one of us possesses the power to choose our own path forward. So here's what I'm offering you today. By the time we finish this journey together, you'll grasp an entirely new blueprint for freedom. A freedom that doesn't rely on your circumstances, your biography, or what anyone else thinks about you. You'll discover why literally all of your problems, yes, every single one, boil down to challenges in your relationships with others. And most excitingly, you'll receive the key to unlocking what these authors call the courage to be happy. This journey might shake the very foundations of what you believe about yourself, but it just might revolutionize everything. Our story opens, as so many of ours do, with someone feeling utterly stuck. We meet a young man drowning in dissatisfaction with his life. He feels imprisoned by his personality, crushed by deep feelings of inadequacy, and chained to the unchangeable facts of his childhood. He's convinced that people simply can't change who they fundamentally are. His world feels complicated, chaotic, and brutally unfair. He tracks down a philosopher who teaches the complete opposite, that the world is surprisingly simple, and that happiness is available to absolutely everyone, right here, right now. The young man naturally thinks this sounds completely ridiculous, and so begins their conversation across 5 nights, a conversation that systematically dismantles everything we think we know about ourselves. The first and most powerful wall to come crashing down is our belief in trauma. This concept has dominated Western thinking for a century, thanks largely to Sigmund Freud. The Freudian perspective, known as etiology, is all about causation. It spins a straightforward narrative. Something painful happened to you before the cause, and that's precisely why you're struggling now. The effect. Your parents split up, so now you fear commitment. You got bullied, so now you lack confidence. The past determines your present. There's something almost comforting about this story. because it whispers, "None of this is your fault." But the philosopher, channeling Alfred Adler's wisdom, drops a bombshell. He declares, "Trauma does not exist." Now, this doesn't mean horrible things don't happen to people. They absolutely do. What it means is that no experience, by itself, causes your success or failure. We aren't defined by what happens to us, but rather by the meaning we choose to assign to those events. He introduces us to Adlerian psychology, which isn't about causes but about goals. This is called teleology. It doesn't ask, what event in your past made you this way? Instead, it asks, what goal are you trying to reach by behaving this way? Consider the young man's friend who's locked himself in his room for years, terrified of stepping outside. The traditional view would hunt for a cause, maybe bullying, maybe difficult parents. Teleology flips this completely upside down. It suggests the friend first decided on a goal, "I don't want to go outside." And to justify that goal, he then created the feelings of anxiety and fear. Why would anyone do something like that? Because staying in his room accomplishes certain objectives. His parents hover over him with constant concern. He becomes the center of their universe. If he ventured outside, he'd just be another face in the crowd, ordinary, maybe even below average. By staying inside, he remains special. His anxiety, though genuinely felt, becomes a tool serving his goal of avoiding life's challenges. This hits hard. It feels like we're being told our suffering is somehow our fault. But Adler's insight isn't about assigning blame. It's about reclaiming power. If our present is determined by our past, we're utterly powerless, just victims of unchangeable circumstances. But if our present flows from the goals we set ourselves, then we can change those goals at any moment. Your life isn't something that merely happens to you. It's something you actively choose, here and now. This brings us to the second earth-shattering idea, a claim so audacious it initially sounds absurd. The philosopher states flatly, all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. Let that sink in for a moment. All problems, not most, not many, all of them. The young man struggles with this, exactly as we do. What about feeling inferior? What about money troubles, or hating how you look? Surely these are private struggles, internal battles. The philosopher explains through his own experience. He stands only about 5 feet tall. For years, he was deeply troubled by his height. This was his inferiority complex. But then he poses a crucial question. Where did this feeling actually originate? If he were the only human on the entire planet, would he even realize he was short? Obviously not. The entire concept of short only exists because he's comparing himself to others. His feeling of inferiority wasn't an objective reality. It was a subjective interpretation born from comparing himself to other people. Here's where Adler draws a vital distinction. A feeling of inferiority, sensing you're lacking somehow, isn't inherently negative. In fact, it's universal. We're all born completely helpless, and we all naturally desire to improve and move forward. Adler called this the, quote, pursuit of superiority. A healthy sense of inferiority can actually launch you toward growth. If you feel you lack knowledge, you study. If you're missing a skill, you practice. The real problem emerges when this feeling sours into an inferiority complex. That's when you start weaponizing your sense of inadequacy as an excuse. You tell yourself, I'm not educated enough, so I can't succeed, or I'm not attractive, so I can't find love. You begin acting as though your shortcomings seal your fate. Adler says this is fundamentally a lie. The reality is closer to, I don't want to put in the effort to succeed, so I'll use my lack of education as my excuse. It's a strategy for dodging life's challenges, protecting your ego by never actually testing it. This avoidance reveals what's really driving our struggles. Imagine living alone on a deserted island. Would you still worry about your appearance? Would you stress about your social status? All these feelings that seem so deeply personal are actually born from the context of other people. At their core, they're interpersonal relationship problems. And when we examine these relationships closely, we often discover a hidden corrosive force: competition. From childhood, we're taught to see life as a race. We compare ourselves to siblings, classmates, coworkers. When someone else wins, we feel like we've lost. When we win, the satisfaction evaporates almost instantly. When you view the world through a competitive lens, everyone becomes a potential rival. You can't genuinely celebrate their joy because their success feels like your defeat. The world transforms into a dangerous battlefield, filled with enemies you must constantly guard against. You can never truly relax because you might lose your position. Even if you keep winning, you live in perpetual fear of the day you won't. Adler's philosophy invites us to walk off this battlefield entirely. He suggests seeing other people not as rivals, but as comrades. Imagine everyone walking on the same level plane. We're all different, moving at different speeds, heading in different directions, but we're all fundamentally equal. The goal isn't to outperform anyone else. The goal is simply to move forward from where you were yesterday. A healthy pursuit of superiority means competing with your ideal self, not the person beside you. When you genuinely see people around you as comrades, everything transforms. You're no longer paralyzed by the fear of judgment. You can celebrate their victories wholeheartedly because their happiness no longer threatens yours. You begin to feel safe. You begin to feel like you genuinely belong. But how do we actually make this shift? How do we stop treating life like a competition and start seeing people as comrades, especially when we feel hurt or controlled by them? This brings us to the most practical and perhaps most challenging tool in Adlerian psychology, the separation of tasks. It's elegantly simple yet profoundly transformative. To untangle our relationship problems, we must first learn to distinguish what is my responsibility and what is yours. And critically, we must not interfere in other people's responsibilities. How can you tell whose task you're looking at? The philosopher offers a straightforward test. Ask yourself, who will ultimately experience the consequences of the choice being made? Let's take a classic example, a child who refuses to study. Parents might force the child to their room, hire tutors, or yell constantly, believing it's their duty. But whose responsibility is studying, really? Who will ultimately face the results? Good grades or bad? College acceptance or rejection? The child. Therefore, studying is fundamentally the child's task. A parent's constant intervention, study, do your homework, is actually an invasion of the child's territory. This intrusion creates conflict. The child rebels, not necessarily because they hate learning, but because they're defending their own territory, their own autonomy. So what should the parent actually do? Nothing at all. No, Adler isn't recommending complete non-interference. The parent should make it crystal clear they're ready and willing to help whenever the child asks. They can create an environment that supports learning, but they cannot force the child to study. You can lead a horse to water, but you absolutely cannot make it drink. Forcing it will only create resistance. This principle reaches into every corner of life. Your boss is in a foul mood. Managing his emotions isn't your task. That's his responsibility. Your task is doing your own work excellently. A friend is wrestling with a difficult decision. Making that choice for them isn't your task. That's theirs. Your task is offering support and being present for them. And now we arrive at the beating heart of the book's title. What about when people genuinely don't like you? What about when they criticize, judge, or completely misunderstand you? Whose task is that? According to the separation of tasks, how someone else feels about you, what they think about you, whether they like or dislike you, that is entirely their task. It is absolutely not yours. You have zero control over it. Your task is living your life with integrity, choosing what you genuinely believe is the right path for yourself. How others judge that path is completely their business. This is the essence of having the courage to be disliked. It doesn't mean you should try to be unlikable, or that rejection won't sting. It means understanding that if you're living a free and authentic life, some people inevitably won't approve. Trying to be liked by absolutely everyone means living in profound imprisonment, constantly contorting yourself to satisfy everyone else's expectations. It means living everyone else's life except your own. Freedom, the philosopher explains, isn't about following every impulse. It's not doing whatever you feel like in the moment. True freedom is having the courage to be disliked. It's proof that you're exercising your freedom and living according to your own principles. This initially sounds isolating. Separating tasks feels like severing our connections with others. But Adler insists this is just the starting point. The separation of tasks isn't the destination. It's the doorway. It untangles the knots in our relationships, so we can begin building genuine, healthy connections. The ultimate aim of all our interpersonal relationships is something Adler called community feeling. Community feeling is the sense that you genuinely belong in this world. It's the feeling that it's okay for me to be here. It's a deep, unshakable sense of belonging. This isn't something someone grants you. It's something you must actively create. And you create it through 3 interconnected practices: self-acceptance, confidence in others, and contribution to others. First comes self-acceptance. This is completely different from self-affirmation. Self-affirmation is lying to yourself, chanting, "I'm strong, I can do anything," even when you feel you can't. Self-acceptance is honestly acknowledging what you cannot change, and having the courage to focus on what you can. You may have been born with certain traits or experienced certain events. You accept those things exactly as they are. If you scored 60 out of 100, you don't pretend it's a 100. You start from that 60 and figure out how to move toward 100. You accept your irreplaceable self, exactly as you are. Once you can accept yourself, you gain courage for the second practice, confidence in others. Adler distinguishes carefully between trust and confidence. Trust is conditional. I'll trust you if you don't betray me. It requires collateral. Confidence, however, is unconditional. It's believing in others without demanding anything in return. It's deciding to see others as comrades, even without proof. This sounds risky. Won't unconditional confidence just get you taken advantage of? Possibly. But if you begin from a position of doubt, you can never build a deep, meaningful relationship with anyone. The other person will sense your suspicion instantly. Only by taking the risk of confidence do you open the door to genuine connection. The decision to have confidence is your task. How they respond to that confidence is theirs. Finally, with self-acceptance and confidence in others as your foundation, you can embrace the third practice, contribution to others. This is the feeling that I am useful to someone. This is the wellspring of worth. Our value isn't determined by what others think of us, but by our own subjective sense that we're contributing. This contribution doesn't require grand, heroic gestures. It can be as simple as washing dishes after dinner, offering sincere thanks to a friend, or doing your job well. The work itself is contribution. The crucial thing isn't whether others praise you for it. In fact, Adler specifically warns against seeking praise. Praise is a judgment passed from someone in a superior position to someone inferior. It creates a vertical, hierarchical relationship. Instead of praise, we should seek horizontal relationships built on gratitude and encouragement. The simple words, "thank you," from a comrade give you a genuine sense of your contribution. And here we arrive at the philosopher's definition of happiness. Happiness is the feeling of contribution. When you feel useful to your comrades, when you experience a sense of contribution, you can accept yourself. You feel you have a place. You have a sense of belonging. You are happy. This brings us to the final, perhaps most beautiful idea in the book. The young man, having followed this entire path, still feels troubled. He asks, what is the actual meaning of life? If there's no grand destination, no summit to conquer, then what's it all for? The philosopher's answer is genuinely liberating. He explains that life isn't a line, a narrative that starts at birth and ends at death. If life were a line, then most of our existence would be spent on the way to some future destination: graduation, career success, retirement. All our moments would just be preparation for something else. Instead, he suggests thinking of life as a series of dots, a collection of moments. Life is a series of nows. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the here and now. Your life isn't a journey to a destination. Your life is a dance. When you're dancing, you're not trying to arrive somewhere. The goal is the dancing itself. Every step, every movement is the fulfillment. A life lived like a dance is one where every moment is complete in itself. There's no on the way. You're always arriving. If you're studying for an exam, dance the dance of studying today. If you're working on a project, dance the dance of your work today. Focus a spotlight so intensely on the here and now that you can see neither the past nor the future. This isn't a recipe for reckless hedonism or irresponsibility. It's a call to live earnestly in the present moment, because this moment is the only reality you actually possess. And what gives this dance its direction? What's the guiding star that prevents us from getting lost? It's contribution to others. As long as you keep moving in the direction of contributing to your comrades, you'll be free, you'll be happy, and you'll always sense your place in the world. Someone has to start. Other people might not cooperate, but that has nothing to do with you. You should start, regardless of whether others are cooperative or not. The world is simple, and life is simple too. As we reach the end of this profound exploration, it's worth pausing to consider why these ideas feel so revolutionary, and why they matter so urgently right now. We inhabit a world obsessed with etiology, with excavating causes in our past. We're encouraged to diagnose our traumas, label our anxieties, and construct our identities around our histories. While this can feel validating, it can also become a prison, reinforcing the belief that we're unchangeable products of our past. Adler's teleology arrives like a gust of fresh air. It doesn't dismiss our pain, but it completely reframes it. It reminds us that our power lives not in dissecting the past, but in choosing our goals for the future, right here in this moment. In a culture sometimes dominated by victimhood, this is an empowering call to responsibility. Not the responsibility of blame, but the responsibility of authorship. You are the author of your own life. The concept that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems feels especially piercing in our social media age. We're more connected than ever before, yet we often feel more judged, more competitive, and more insecure. We curate our lives, hunting for approval from others, constantly checking for likes and comments, which is really just a modern craving for recognition. Adler identified this trap a century ago. He understood that living to meet others' expectations is a form of slavery. The separation of tasks and the courage to be disliked is the antidote. It's a declaration of independence from the tyranny of others' judgment. And finally, the idea of life as a dance. Our society is built entirely on the mountain climbing model of life. We're perpetually striving for the next milestone, the next achievement, the next destination. We exist in a constant state of not yet. We'll be happy when we graduate, when we land the promotion, when we retire. Adler reveals this as the greatest life lie. By constantly focusing on a future that doesn't exist, we neglect the only life we actually have, the one unfolding right now. So how can we begin putting these powerful ideas into practice today? Here are a few simple actions. First, for the next 24 hours, consciously practice the separation of tasks. Anytime you feel a surge of anxiety, anger, or worry related to another person, pause and ask yourself that simple question: whose task is this? If your friend is making a questionable decision, recognize that the consequences belong to them. Your task is to support, not control. If someone makes a casual comment about you, recognize that their opinion is their task. Your task is living by your own values. Just this simple act of observation can create a remarkable sense of lightness and freedom. Second, find one small, invisible way to practice contribution. Don't do it hoping for a thank you or any recognition whatsoever. Tidy up a shared space at home or work. Send an encouraging message to a friend without expecting a response. Do something that makes you feel, I am useful to someone, even if that someone is the broader community. Pay attention to that quiet, internal feeling of worth it generates. That feeling is the seed of happiness. The Courage to be Disliked isn't an easy book. It challenges us at every turn, but its message carries incredible hope. It tells us we're not fragile beings, shattered by our past. We're powerful creators, capable of choosing our own meaning, our own relationships, and our own happiness, right here and now. That was a deep dive into The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. We've explored the core principles today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real magic happens when you walk the territory yourself. It's in those quiet moments of reading, when a particular phrase or story resonates in a way you didn't expect, that genuine transformation occurs. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book deserves your time and attention. If anything we've discussed has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely transform how you see yourself and the world around you. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a fresh perspective, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.